The paddock fell silent before the storm. Cameras caught only a flicker, Gigi Dall'Igna's jaw tightening, his words sharp as carbon fiber. He must be stronger psychologically and ride the bike above the problems. It wasn't just a statement. It was a verdict. Behind closed doors, whispers leaked from an Italian television interview, never meant to air in full, something about limits reached, something about a champion no longer in sync with the machine. And suddenly, the question no one dared ask hung over Ducati like smoke. Has Pecco Bagnaia lost control of his destiny, or has the GP25 turned against its own creator? The bike that rewrote history now demands something more than skill. It demands surrender. Its rear sensor reads in decimals what the soul feels in heartbreak. The engineers call it data. The rider calls it betrayal. You can see it in Pecco's eyes, the tension of a man cornered by perfection, haunted by a younger teammate who rides the same machine like a living extension of instinct. The Ducati garage is split, silence on one side, celebration on the other, and in that silence a legacy trembles. Because when the boss explodes and the bike stops listening, greatness is no longer about speed. It's about survival. And somewhere between rage and redemption, between telemetry and faith, the two-time world champion must decide whether to fight the machine or become it. And so the story shifted from whispers in Bologna to the blinding heat of Portimão, where every corner became a question and every lap a confession. What began as a search for redemption soon unraveled into a cruel theater of truth. The moment Pecco Bagnaia's comeback turned into his most haunting ordeal. The Algarve sun rose over Portimão like a promise, glinting off the red fairings of Ducati's most powerful creation, but by nightfall that promise had turned to dust. Bagnaia arrived here searching for redemption, for rhythm, for the fragile thread that once bound him to invincibility. Fourth on the grid, the champion looked composed, eyes fixed, heart steady, and yet beneath the helmet a storm brewed. "This is the one," he told his engineer before the lights went out, his voice more prayer than prediction. The sprint began with energy, but almost instantly he felt the rear tire betray him, a slow, oily slide that robbed him of drive. "What's happening to me?" he thought mid-corner, that private whisper echoing louder than the engines around him. Each lap became a negotiation between control and surrender, every acceleration an act of faith. When he crossed the line in eighth, the silence in the pit box was heavier than the Portuguese air. "I'm not happy with how I rode today," he said afterward, the words clipped, almost ashamed. Few noticed a subtle technical clue. The GP25's rear sensor had shown a regular heat distribution, an omen hidden in telemetry. It explained the fading grip, the ghost that lived in the rear Pirelli and refused to let him dance. Sunday offered another chance, the long race a reset. For 10 laps, he fought like a man desperate to remember himself, leaning into turn 9 with the precision of a surgeon tracing a heartbeat. Then a tremor, the front folded, and the Ducati slid on its side like a falling star. Dust, silence, disbelief. He sat in the gravel, visor down, feeling the earth spin faster than his season. Around him, mechanics exhaled like men who had seen this too many times. Portimão was supposed to be an opening, but it became a mirror, showing him everything he no longer controlled. The GP25, beautiful and cruel, had devoured its own creator. The weekend ended not with rage, but with a hollow calm of someone realizing he has become the passenger of his own legend. The GP25 was meant to be evolution made metal, the perfect fusion of engineering and instinct. Yet somewhere in its anatomy, it forgot who it was built for. Bagnaia feels it each time he leans in, that split second where balance should arrive, but doesn't, where the bike resists instead of flowing. Ducati's engineers call it reactive torque imbalance, a sterile phrase that hides 1,000 shades of suffering. On the telemetry, it's a dance of decimals. On the track, it's a fight with a ghost. Márquez rides the same machine like it was born in his blood, and Aldeguer, fearless and young, bends it to his will with reckless elegance. Pecco, instead, must persuade it, whispering through the throttle, carving with precision where others carve with fury. "Why won't you listen to me anymore?" He wonders mid-corner, a thought so human it hurts. "The bike is perfect, just not for me," he murmured afterward, his tone calm but trembling beneath the surface. The rear transfer feels like betrayal, the front, like silence. Beneath the carbon and titanium hides a paradox, a masterpiece that refuses obedience. A new crankshaft geometry has altered the bike's natural pitch, shifting weight under braking and stealing his confidence one turn at a time. Watching onboard footage is like watching a painter fight his own brush. Each movement looks correct, but the result is chaos. Ducati's perfection has trapped its champion in a machine too intelligent to feel. The engineers celebrate data, the rider mourns connection. The GP25 hums beneath him like a siren, seductive, brilliant, and merciless. In Portugal, that hum turned to static, a signal lost in the noise of progress. By the end of the weekend, Bagnaia understood the cruel truth of modern MotoGP. Even the most advanced bike in history can forget the soul that once made it fly. Saturday dawned over Portimão with that deceptive calm racers know too well, the kind that whispers promise before it burns. Bagnaia's visor reflected a horizon of fire and salt, the track shimmering like a mirage he couldn't quite reach. The sprint began with precision, his start crisp, his intent sharp, but by the second lap the rear grip started to melt away like wax under heat. "I'm not happy with how I rode today," he confessed later to Sky Sport, but it wasn't just riding, it was surviving. Inside his helmet, the voice that once commanded now trembled. "Find the feeling, Pecco. Just find it." Yet the Ducati answered in vibration, not words, every acceleration an argument. Engineers traced the problem to microscopic variations in rear tire temperature. 2 degrees too hot on the right shoulder, invisible to the eye but fatal to rhythm. Each lap, Bagnaia's flow dissolved into hesitation. Each corner felt like a negotiation with gravity. His eyes said what telemetry couldn't. The bond was broken. The flag fell, 8th place, empty and quiet. Then came Sunday's long race, redemption within reach. 410 laps, he rode like a ghost of himself, measured, meticulous, almost free. The front tire bit the tarmac with cautious trust, until turn 5 arrived like an ambush. The front folded without warning, and the Ducati slid into the gravel in slow, unbearable motion. The world turned gray in his visor. Silence. Again, he thought, numb. Mechanics looked down, not in anger, but exhaustion. A weekend that began as a recovery mission became another wound in a season bleeding away. The sprint was frustration, the race ruin. Portimão didn't just take his points, it took a piece of his belief. In the quiet corridors of Borgo Panigale, whispers have a way of turning into storms, and after Portimão, the thunder had a name, Gigi Dall'Igna. The Ducati Corse general manager, normally measured and surgical in his words, stepped in front of the cameras with a glare that could cut through steel. "Every race that passes is a wasted opportunity to improve," he declared, his voice clipped, each syllable a verdict. It wasn't anger for show. It was the fury of a man watching perfection slip through his fingers. Behind the scenes, the debrief stretched late into the night. Engineers dissected data, but what Dall'Igna saw wasn't numbers. It was a pattern of decay. Bagnaia's rhythm, once his greatest weapon, had become erratic, his telemetry an uneven heartbeat. "How many times can I say I'll bounce back before they stop believing me?" Pecco thought, eyes fixed on the blank table between them. Gigi, ever the architect of Ducati's renaissance, looked more like a disappointed father than a team boss. "You had the pace, Pecco," he said quietly, "but no conviction." The words hung like smoke. Few outside the team know that Dall'Igna had personally overseen the GP25's torque recalibration system, an adaptive mapping that should have given Bagnaia smoother exits but instead magnified his traction woes under specific track temperatures. It was irony made mechanical. Meanwhile, Aldeguer's telemetry glowed green across the board, perfect consistency, rising confidence, the future unfolding in real time. The comparison was brutal. Márquez the conqueror, Aldeguer the prodigy, and Bagnaia, the man who once led the army, now stranded between eras. In Bologna's wind tunnel, his name no longer echoed as prophecy, but as question. Dall'Igna's explosion was not a loss of control, but calculated detonation, a signal to the paddock that Ducati's hierarchy was shifting. The press called it tension. Inside the garage, it felt like evolution. Maybe they're right to move on, Bagnaia admitted to himself that night, a confession barely louder than breath. Yet even fury, when born of disappointment, is proof of belief. Gigi didn't rage because he'd given up, he raged because he hadn't. Still, in Portimão's aftermath, something irreversible cracked. The bond between genius and champion, between creator and rider, trembled under the weight of unmet expectation. Ducati's empire is built on precision, but emotion has always been its hidden engine. And when the man who built the dream begins to doubt its chosen hero, the tremor isn't mechanical, it's mythological. The calm that followed Gigi's explosion was colder than silence, and every Ducati mechanic felt it. Portimão will be remembered not for the crash or the points lost, but for the moment the man who designed Bagnaia's destiny finally questioned it. Inside the Ducati garage, the air after Portimão was thick enough to taste, a mixture of burnt rubber, frustration, and something heavier, doubt. Gigi Dall'Igna's fury had left scorch marks on the team's morale, but not everyone chose fire as their language. Davide Tardozzi, ever the mediator, spoke to the press with a voice that carried both empathy and exhaustion. "Our thoughts are with Pecco," he said quietly. "He is fast, but something is not clicking, technically and mentally." His words fell like a gentle counterpoint to Gigi's thunder, but inside the paddock, they exposed the fractured lines of a team torn between compassion and conquest. "They still believe in me, don't they?" Pecco wondered as he listened to the replay on his phone, the pit wall humming with the mechanical sighs of post-race teardown. Technicians pored over data screens, arguing about chassis flex ratios and thermal degradation curves. The vocabulary of defeat was now deeply scientific. A small but telling number emerged: 0.23 millimeters of lateral drift under braking, a microscopic imbalance that multiplied across 20 laps into chaos. It wasn't just physics. It was psychology rendered in numbers. Márquez's side of the garage, efficient and electric, buzzed with quiet triumph, while Pecco's half sat still, like a chapel after confession. Tardozzi moved between them, the priest and the pragmatist, reminding engineers that machines are only half the battle. "He just needs to breathe again," he told mechanic, half belief, half prayer. Ducati had become two teams under one roof, the conquerors and the caretakers. The former chased perfection through metrics, the latter chased faith through memory. "You can't calculate confidence," Pecco told himself, staring at the ghostly blue glow of telemetry that no longer spoke his language. The GP25 was evolving away from him, adapting to Márquez's aggression, Aldeguer's audacity, leaving its original master behind. Dall'Igna wanted answers. Tardozzi wanted balance. Somewhere between them stood Bagnaia, a man translating pressure into performance and pain into silence. The contradiction was exquisite and cruel. Ducati's greatest strength had become its emotional divide. In the end, Tardozzi's calm couldn't mask the storm. Sympathy may soften headlines, but it doesn't win championships. And as the team packed up under the fading Portuguese light, every sound, the clatter of tools, the hiss of compressors, seemed to whisper the same truth. Unity, once broken, never sounds the same again. By the time the sun set over Portimão, Pecco Bagnaia knew he was no longer fighting for victory. He was fighting for relevance. The crash, so sudden and brutal, was more than a fall. It was the sound of an era shifting gears without him. Márquez's dominance now feels inevitable, Aldeguer's rise unstoppable, and somewhere between the two, the reigning champion drifts like a satellite losing signal. Am I still the leader of this project, or just a reminder of what it used to be? He asked himself, helmet still on, staring at the empty pit box. The numbers are cruel. 257 points behind Márquez, his grip on third place now gone as Bezzecchi surges past, and a season gasping for oxygen. The GP25, with its cold precision and merciless pace, no longer carries his signature. It has become Ducati's machine, not his. "I still believe in my potential," he told reporters later, a smile rehearsed, eyes distant. Deep inside, he felt what telemetry couldn't measure, the slow erosion of certainty. Engineers talk of upgrades and datasets, but Pecco knows the real deficit isn't mechanical, it's spiritual. The new chassis introduced after Qatar had altered center mass distribution by 1.6%, giving Márquez extra corner entry bite but stealing Bagnaia's mid-turn stability. Tiny numbers, devastating consequence. His style, once liquid and unbreakable, now looks forced, as if every motion demands permission from a bike that no longer trusts him. Around him, Ducati's future gleams, young, fearless, optimized, while his confidence flickers like a low-fuel light. The paddock whispers in tones of past tense. They still call him champion, but it sounds nostalgic now. "I won't be the ghost of my own legacy," he thinks, jaw tight, voice quiet. And yet, within that defiance lives exhaustion, a man circling the limits of belief. Bagnaia has the speed, the intelligence, the pedigree, but MotoGP's evolution is merciless. It waits for no soul, no sentiment. The line between redemption and irrelevance narrows with every race, every crash, every late-night debrief under fluorescent regret. Still, if history has a sense of justice, it may remember this moment not as his fall, but as his reckoning. Because in the cruel mathematics of greatness, relevance isn't given. It's taken back one impossible corner at a time.